presentation, Race to the Finish, Migrating Digital Collections to Digital Commons on a Deadline. Said digital a lot there. Too fast. Okay, so hi, I'm Irina Rogova. I am currently the Digital Initiatives Librarian at Virginia Commonwealth University, or VCU, in Richmond, Virginia. And I've been working with digital collections since 2016 and have used a number of platforms for collections, including Omeka, DSpace, and Islandora. Working at VCU has been my first time using digital commons for digital collections. So first, a little roadmap of my presentation today. We'll discuss what led to this migration, the nuts and bolts leading up to it, the experience of migrating, and finally the lessons learned, including recommendations for how digital commons can better support digital collections in the future. So why migrate? Like many institutions, the short answer is we had to. VCU used Content DM for digital collections for over a decade and migrated to Lyrasis-hosted Islandora in 2019. In 2022, with barely 2 years under their belts, Lyrasis announced that they would sunset their Islandora hosting in April 2024. Leading up to my start date at VCU, which was a year ago, a digital collections platform workgroup assessed the total cost, functionality, interoperability, ability to host a variety of file formats, platform support, user experience, and ease of migration before deciding on digital commons, which we were already using as our IR, as the new platform. I came into my position after this decision was made, so pretty much inherited this decision making and hit the ground running when I started. Up next are the nuts and bolts. Oh, too fast. Okay. This was our migration team. So Sam, Katie, and I are all in the digital libraries and publishing department run by Karen. Karen and I both started at VCU a few months apart, and the department was newly formed at her start. So our department is like half new people, half people that were brought in from other departments. It's a little bit of a weird situation. And then Marianne has been the metadata librarian and worked on existing digital collections, so her role on our team was really imperative. Starting migration with a team that had regularly scheduled meetings, a vision for the process, and delegated tasks was vital to our success. Nope. So these were I think I'm pressing the button too hard. So these were our expectations for migration. In Islandora, we had 45 collections with 28,508 individual items. We plan to export our items and metadata from Islandora, crosswalk the metadata from mods to Dublin Core, and ingest into digital commons. Easy, right? We expected this to be tedious, but we did not think that we would have to rush through anything between August 2023 and April 2024, which was the deadline. But as things usually go, reality hit us pretty quickly. Upon starting to look at the collections, which I was pretty much totally unfamiliar with, being new to the institution, I realized that the 45 collections we had in Islandora needed to be parsed out into separate collections, increasing the total number to 67. Additionally, throughout the process of creating access files, which I'll mention again in a few, our digital specialist, Katie, discovered a few dozen files that had not been included in previous collection ingests. And we had large collections with compound items that could not be replicated how we wanted them in digital commons, which also upped our item count. And we also experienced major issues with the exports of metadata and access files from Lyrasis, which I'll talk about more. And while we met our April 2024 deadline successfully, there was rushing. The rushing happened. I don't know. Okay. Oh, okay. The experience. To guide you all through the experience of our migration on a deadline, I will identify 7 problems we encountered and the solutions we came up with. Some are unique to VCU, some are unique to the experience of leaving Lyrasis' Islandora, and some are on the digital commons end of things. Our first problem, as I mentioned, was the data export from Lyrasis. We received data in tar files, and when that data was extracted, encountered difficult to use file formats. Many files had no file extensions. And it was difficult to parse which files were metadata, which ones were images, what was PDF, other file types. Here's an example of what we got, which is not something I know how to parse very easily. Lyrasis did not offer us any support with this. They pretty much told us to rely on our own library technologies team. Our solution was born out of luck and future planning during previous migrations. We decided that we could not commit the time and effort to reverse engineer the data export from Lyrasis, and instead use the metadata, TXT, and XML files that were exported from ContentDM during the 2019 migration, which had thankfully been saved. This will be a common theme. While some collections had been updated between migrations, it was fairly easy to figure out which ones needed updates to their ContentDM metadata, and members of the previous export team are still around, thankfully, and shared which collections had changed. A bonus here was that ContentDM is also in Dublin core, so the crosswalking got to get cut out of the middle. Our next problem was also with the Lyrasis data export. We lost all of our access files because we decided not to use that export. Thankfully, though VCU does not have a robust digital preservation process yet, I'm working on it. Preservation copies for nearly all collections had been saved to designated server space and could be matched with the ContentDM metadata. It took some time to match up file names. This took a great amount of time, especially for Katie, and then regenerating access copies did allow us to find errors in collections and missing items, so there was a plus side to that. Another problem arose due to the regeneration of access copies. Previous institutional decisions had landed on JPEG 2000 as our preferred access format for images. Katie had generated thousands of access copies by the time, we realized that Digital Commons does not really support JPEG 2000. It's a little funky. And our consultant, Kirsty Haruta, really helped us out with troubleshooting the upload errors we were having because we could not figure out why our files were not batch uploading properly and kept stalling out and erroring out. And it was the JPEG 2000s. I recommend starting your migration with a straightforward pilot. We chose an image collection with about 300 items, and this really let us figure out all of the issues before turning to a 1,000+ item collection. So even though Katie put a lot of time into generating those first few 1,000 JPEG 2000s, we figured it out pretty quickly. Next up was the collection parsing that led to that 20+ number bump on our number of collections. When collections had previously been uploaded, similar publications had been lumped into one collection. For example, VCU yearbooks had been uploaded altogether, despite having 5 distinct titles and originating from 3 schools. Here I worked with Kirsty to use DC's nesting process of subcollections to divide collections while still being able to intellectually group them. And there's I'm breaking this. There we go. So there on the right, you can see that we have a parent VCU yearbooks collection, and then all of the collections underneath are individual yearbooks, and we've actually added a 6th yearbook since this migration, which is a yearbook I really love, and I'd love to talk about it more. Next up was a fairly difficult hurdle. We had very little documented institutional history about the decision-making for our existing collections. Probably everyone has encountered this. This made it really difficult to understand some metadata decisions, make updates, find preservation files, and pair them with their metadata, and particularly to credit individuals who worked on collections, something we implemented during the migration. As a side note, I highly recommend adding a credit statement to digital collections, particularly when student workers or paraprofessionals are working on projects. Being able to point to collections directly, hyperlinked on their CV, is really helpful as they consider future careers in libraries. On this problem, we lucked out again, in that 2 members of our migration team had been involved in almost all previous digitization projects. They took the time, a lot of time to parse their emails, which we've now added to the collection as PDFs, like in the preservation package for collections, and we're continuing to practice that now with new collections. So even if we're making decisions about like, what PPI are we using for this collection, or how are we going to divide these files, we email back and forth about it, even if we originally have the conversation in person, so we can save the PDF and add it to the preservation package. Next up, an issue with aggregated collecting. We are a contributing institution to Digital Virginia's, which is a DPLA hub. Our crawls happen twice a year in December and June, which is not ideal for an April migration deadline. So we had 3 collections in DPLA that needed updates with about I think it was 500 items total. And we needed to update both the item and the cover image URLs for how they're displayed in DPLA. So for this, I worked with Kirsty again and our applications analyst at VCU to figure out how to match an Islandora field with a digital commons field that then our applications analyst could make a script from to update the DPLA items. So we updated 2 of those 3 collections before the deadline, didn't quite get to the 3rd, and relied on redirects until the June crawl updated the final collection. Last one, but most significantly for me and my commitment to equitable metadata, was that many of our existing collections contained both offensive materials that had not been appropriately addressed and problematic metadata that needed to be updated. Because we were working on a tight deadline, I could not accomplish all of the work I wanted to. What we accomplished involved placing a VCU Libraries approved content warning on the digital collections landing page, on related collections, and changing some of the most problematic language during the migration. It also, this process allowed me to flag collections that needed further work in the future, which I've been able to work on now. Now that I've covered some of our experience, I want to share the lessons learned and some future recommendations. So, the biggest lesson learned was the importance of keeping a record of how digital collections are planned, executed, and changed. We have all, I'm sure, experienced the feeling of being dumbfounded by decision making by decisions that were made before we stepped into a role. Holding onto emails, creating digitization plans, and saving historical metadata will allow our digital collections to have clarity far into the future. Second, having a team to support migration was vital. Even though Katie and I were doing the bulk of the work, having regular meetings, a vision for our migration at the start, and just other folks to bounce questions and ideas off of made migration run smoothly. This also meant we had a built-in team of folks to perform QC after migration, because when I was QCing, just like everything blurred and I could not see any of the mistakes that were very clearly in front of me. And we were able to finish before our April 2024 deadline. Alongside the team, we tracked migration tasks through a series of spreadsheets and task lists. This allowed us to delegate tasks and stay on track of the minutiae of migration, especially as the deadline approached. We needed to update redirects, make sure links on the library website and in LibGuides were up to date, and even contact community partners to make sure they were aware of the migration and prepared for the switch. And for that, a big shout out to my department head, Karen Bjork, for managing most of those task lists, because I had enough spreadsheets to deal with. Finally, going into migration, we knew that there would be collections that required reparative metadata work. I was not prepared for the amount of negotiation that would occur in updating existing metadata to what I understand to be professional best practices. Thankfully, I have connections to the community of practice around reparative metadata and was able to make strong cases for the overhauls I made. Finally, some recommendations for how digital commons can better accommodate institutions that are looking to move their digital collections to this platform. VCU was already using DC for its institutional repository and journal publishing. However, we had to work around a lot of existing limitations to make our digital collections work. So first, Increased visuals in digital commons. Digital collections rely on visual interest from users. Being able to display collections visually on higher levels of the platform will help get more interest in using the platform for digital collections. I know that this is an option with exhibits, but I think on the actual IR page, that would be really helpful. There we go, okay. Second, allow for the merger of book and image galleries. Nope. Allow for the merger of book and image galleries. This is revolutionary, I know. It's okay, I can hold your hand through it. Many of our collections are multimedia collections. That's just how they exist in the archive, and we're trying to replicate the experience of discovery in the archive. So we've had to really split collections into like 2 or 3 different collections at once. So here you can see that we have the Bang Arts Festival collection, and we had to split it between documents and images. The In Carroll Wildflower Digital Archive, we had to split between the actual archive of images, supplemental written materials, and then supplemental images, because intellectually it just didn't make sense to only split them into 2. And same with this Ed Peoples public school, we had to split between documents and photographs. I'm only pressing it one time. Okay. Date flexibility. This is another big one for me. Many of our materials in the archives are undated and we don't have the certainty of a publication date the way that journals do. Our current workaround, thanks to Kirsty, is hiding the publication date field and mapping a date field to the description field, to DC description. However, this still means that in searches, the upload date is displayed in the date field for materials with no publication date. This is very confusing. Oh. Here's an example, so you can see these are photographs from the 19th century, but because they're undated and we can't put just a date range, they're showing up as the date that they were uploaded to DC. And then finally, the embedded viewer upgrades. This is something that Katie noticed. She's, I'm getting the wrap up. She's a photography specialist, so this is really stands out to her. It would be great to have a flipping option for PDFs so we can look at things more like books. We've also noticed a reduction in image quality between the actual image we're ingesting and the one in the viewer. Our team works really hard to get beautiful images, and it's just a shame to see them reduced. So on the left here, the left is the DC, and the right is what you actually download. And then up here, the top is the DC, and the bottom is what you download. I think you can see the difference more in this image on the left or on the right. We're not sure if our users know that they're getting that better quality if they download, if they're only seeing it in the worst quality in the viewer. This is maybe niche, but when you're working with these photographs all the time, it's really important. So those are my recommendations. We'll see how this advances. There we go. Thank you. Thanks for attending. That's our Scholars Compass is our digital collections and IR in general. Here's my email. Happy to answer questions, chat. Sorry I talk really, really fast. Thank you. Yeah.
Have you... Hello? Have you used your collection descriptions to inform users that they can download the images for better resolution?
We have not. I think that is an option. I would need to think about what field we want to put it in, maybe create another field. I'm always thinking about are people going to scroll down far enough to read it? So.
First of all, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
That's really an impressive done under pressure like that.
Thank you.
This is real minor, but I'm interested to know if you had any trouble creating PDFs from emails. Because between Microsoft and Adobe, mine turn out like garbage.
Yeah, I haven't done any for this institution yet, but I did some at my previous institution, and they're not great, especially if you're trying to create, if you're trying to like export a whole inbox into a PDF that's searchable. It's trash and horrible. I'm still figuring out email preservation, and I think a lot of people are. Sorry, I can't help you more.
It's good to know it's not just me.
No, I think
feel
it's
reassured.
like really hard, and it's going to take us a while to figure it out. I also teach digital preservation, so I think about this a lot, and I don't have a solution for my students, one of whom is in the room. And as she knows, my class was called Issues in Digitization, Preservation, and Access, not Solutions. Good. Stunned everyone into silence. Wonderful. All right, thanks.